can you describe FNF India's operations and role within the broader FNF ecosystem, including key service lines, client segments, and how India fits into your global delivery model?
So FNF India came in the year 2005, essentially to India, and we started off buying a fairly small entity here in India. We acquired 50% of it. And essentially between then and 2 years, they realized by the year rather 2007, they realized that there's a lot of value that India can bring to the table. And based on that, they acquired the whole company out. And so in the year 2007 or late 2007, we became FNF India, so Fidelity National Financial India. Now, from an India standpoint, we started off with some of our data analytics practice. We had a big public data management business that was there that required an extensive amount of human capital required to be able to execute some of these projects. And so that's where we started off. And then from there, they quickly realized that, okay, it had a certain amount of value. And they moved up the value chain and said, okay, let's do some of the underwriting, some of the examining type of functions. And so we started off with that. We were successful and then expanded that into technology. And since then, the journey has been incrementally growing. And over the last 2 years, from the year, say 2003 to now, we've essentially grown from about 3,300 employees to where we're sitting at close to about 5,200 employees. So we added close to 2,000 employees just in the last 2 years. So that's where FNF India plays a part in FNF's overall role. But as a company, it's one of those things that Fidelity also grows through a lot of acquisitions. So they acquire a lot of companies within the industry that we are in, but they also acquire a lot of companies that are in the periphery of where Fidelity operates in. And India plays a part in some of that synergy that can come in when we do these acquisitions, whether it is to standardize operating practices, whether it is to reduce costs when we take on some of these new projects. India's played a significant role in all of those. And so today, India's, I would say, gone from purely being an executor of tasks in the US or from the parent organization to a strategic arm that helps basically drive the growth of the organization itself.
How does FNF India balance profitability with innovation in process and data intensive businesses like title insurance and mortgage services?
So it's very unique that usually global capability centers operate as a cost center. And largely when it runs as a cost center, a lot of the decisions get taken in the parent organization. And India essentially becomes a group that executes it. The plus side for Fidelity is that we operate as a profit center. And while from an India entity standpoint itself, it might still be a cost center because we do have a holding company that we roll up into. It needs to be a transfer price agreement that we need to have in place. For all intents and purposes, there's a lot of operating freedom that India has. So one of our precepts is autonomy and entrepreneurship. So hence the reason that every business unit is given a lot of operating freedom. So from that context, what we've been able to do is that as long as we are able to justify the spends that we have, whether it's in the latest of tech or otherwise, there's a lot of freedom to make those decisions from India. So as an example, a couple of years ago, RPA was the rage. Robotic process automation was supposed to be the next big thing. And so unlike most GCCs where you needed to get corporate approvals to make some of these decisions, we could make some of those decisions ourselves. We quickly realized that yes, there's value in it for certain type of functions and there isn't value for every type of function. And so we channeled our attention to the ones that we had the maximum value in. And for the rest of it, we didn't just drink the Kool-Aid and just put that in place. Same thing happened with AI. So a few years ago, we heard about ChatGPT and everybody was on this big bandwagon of getting on AI. And so unlike, again, a lot of the others where they had to get approvals and things like that, yes, we also have a protocol to follow, but largely we had a little bit more freedom to basically take some of those calls. And today I feel like those have played a big part in us being able to get some solutions which are market ready in the shortest amount of time. That typically in a GCC doesn't happen. So we've been fortunate that way. We do have that operating freedom to operate as long as the numbers work. So it's almost like you're running your own business. and you're making the right kind of decisions for the organization.
What is the main reason that companies are trying to shift their GCCs to India?
So it's a interesting scenario, right? So if you go back 20 years or 25 years when this GCC industry itself started off, largely India was a cost play. I mean, you came to India because the cost of India was a fifth of the cost in the US. And so it was very easy to make that decision to say, okay, I'm doing AP in, say, in the US, I'm taking to India, I can essentially save a fifth of the cost, or I could reduce it to the fifth of the cost. But very quickly you realize that over time India's costs have risen. But what in those 20, 25 years India has been able to do is that they've been able to build a strong domain knowledge. So today we operate in a very niche insurance stroke real estate mortgage market. To find talent like this anywhere else in the world is almost impossible. But in India, we do have talent, not just with us, with Fidelity, but our competition is also here in India. So now all of a sudden you have deep domain knowledge. You have, and of course, India being a fairly young demographic, you tend to find that people are much more open to technology. They're willing to test the waters out. I mean, so you tend to find that you do have people who are willing to change along with domain. I mean, today India is in a beautiful spot. I mean, there is no other country that can possibly claim something of that nature. Today, if you look, just walk around some of the big cities in India, you can touch literally every large organization out there, whether it's a Google or a Microsoft or an Nvidia. India has a presence, has played a part in it. So even at the latest bleeding technology, I mean, you have talent that is available, and now you add that to the domain knowledge that you've built over the last 20 years, India is unstoppable.
Where do you see AI and automation creating the most meaningful impact across operations while maintaining accuracy and compliance?
So, I mean, this is the big buzzword, right? I mean, AI. There's no conversations that you have without AI coming into the conversation. The reality of the situation is that we started a journey with AI a few years ago, and so we see the impact. We have reached a point where we are seeing certain projects go live, where the impact is we have a 600-member team that may need only a 100-member support. So we truly believe that there is going to be an impact with AI. But the good part about what I see with AI is we are sitting in a situation where e-commerce came about 20 years ago and we thought we won't have malls, right? And even today, if you go around Bangalore itself, if you go into some of these malls over the weekend, there's so many people walking around the mall. The experience is something that people crave for. So instead of just buying anything and everything else on their phone, on e-commerce, which you could do, people still show up to the mall, spend the time walking around. And so as with AI, we truly believe, or I truly believe, that you're going to see an impact to business without a shadow of doubt. But with that said, there's always going to be newer areas that get opened up because of the fact that this tech is now available to us. I mean, the speed at which, say, customer service is going to be done, I mean, it's going to be incredibly fast. I mean, just recently I had, I reached out to American Express to basically make a change in my account. It was a 10 chat message conversation that I had to get the result. Instead of waiting in line on a telephone call for an hour and a half and getting somebody who may or may not have the right answer. So you tend to find that experience, I mean, is something that is improved my experience with American Express itself. So similarly, you'll start to find that while there'll be certain jobs that'll go away, there'll be new ones that'll get created in the process. So, but from an FNF standpoint, we're seeing some serious impact. I mean, and I think for the better for the organization, and overall, we'll start to see India's value proposition grow even more, because now the only place where you can go for domain and tech is going to be probably India at a fair price.
What steps is FNF India taking to prepare its workforce for an AI-enabled and technology-driven future?
So what you tend to find is that, see, today for the 600 people that we have, we were supporting only about 143 counties. And in the US, and this is just speaking of the US, there's 3,000 counties that are there. We couldn't get to 3,000 because of the human capital that was needed. And in many cases, the cost of doing it for 3,000 was exorbitant in a pure brute force kind of model. Whereas now with AI, now the 100 people can handle the 143. but now I have the ability as a company to be able to go to market to all 3,000 of those companies. So from a staffing standpoint, what we truly believe is that the 600 will remain, but instead of doing 143 counties, we'll get to 1,000 first, and then eventually to that 3,000. So we think that the potential for new markets to open up because of some of these changes is going to be huge. From a specific standpoint, from an India standpoint or from FNF standpoint, what we are also doing is that we're letting all our leaders get hands-on experience with what we're doing with AI. We don't want it to be this black box that nobody knows what it can and cannot do. Because a lot of times, if people get the exposure of what the technology can do, you tend to find that they're able to look at their own functions and see where the value is going to be by putting that in. And plus, they tend to be less reluctant to some of these changes that is coming in. And so you tend to find that the functions that were dry and boring and had to be done, now all of a sudden you have somebody else or an AI agent basically handling it. And so I truly believe that this is the right kind of change to go up the value stream, both for FNF India as well.
In a highly regulated environment, how does FNF stay ahead of operational, reputational, and client-related risks globally?
So we are going through a huge turmoil in that space just because of the fact that today AI can do, even from a risk standpoint, they can do a lot more. So any threat actor who has access to this technology, now you need to be a lot more guarded. So at least from an India standpoint, we've got extremely strict, and I would say from a Fidelity standpoint itself, we've got extremely strict with who can come in, how can they come into our networks, how do we control data coming in, data going out. So there's a lot more risk management functions that have been put in place to prevent, say, any sort of hacking of our networks or threat actors getting into our data and being able to extract that data out. So we're starting to see that happen. Now, have we fleshed out every single risk that is out there? No. I mean, simple examples would be even in hiring. If you used AI, people are now being able to put, say, in white letters, you can basically put the keywords, and all of a sudden that resume that should not have been picked is higher up in that list and is showing up to the interviewer and he's wasting his time on it because that candidate should never have been on that list in the first place. So you tend to find that some of those risks haven't been fully understood. And so we will go through a journey over the next, I would say maybe 2-3 years, where you'll start to see some of those risks. And as we encounter that, we'll put appropriate controls to prevent it from impacting business.
Looking ahead, where do you see the next wave of value creation for FNF India?
It has to be in some of what I've already spoken with regard to AI. We are seeing, like I said, I mean, we started off in this project about a year and a half ago. We had an operating freedom to basically run with it. We spent close to $3 million, a little over $3 million on this project. And now we're seeing the benefit, right? In that you're starting to see that this is what the capability of the tool is. So, and India played essentially the driver role in making this change, testing it out. And so I feel that because of the domain knowledge that we have and now our tech capability in some of these bleeding edge technology, I think you're going to see India play a much more serious role in helping organizations or companies basically drive where we're going to go. The good part is over the last 20 years, we've proven ourselves in terms of being able to manage business well. So you tend to find that we get a seat at the table on most decisions that are getting made. And so all of those things are going to be hugely beneficial. And I think from an FNF standpoint, we'll see this continue to grow as an organization, continue to be a strategic partner to making some of these big decisions, whether it's to manage new businesses coming in, whether it's to expand our marketplace itself. I think India is going to be will play a big role.